So we only have about an hour to talk here. I mean, we can talk a little longer, but obviously we don't have the whole night. If you would like to continue talking with Evan and Matt and Michael and any of the other Denis Wick artists, I strongly suggest that you all join our Denis Wick Facebook group called Team Denis Wick. I'm going to share a link with you guys here so you can click it if you don't want to search for it. Team Denis Wick is where artists are all available, so you can continue these discussions we're having tonight and in any other any of our other webinars on Team Denis Wick. Another good way to connect with us is through our Denis Wick app. It's just a hub of all brass industry and information that you might want to know. There's video clinics, there's articles, there's the Denis Wick radio station with music from all of our artists. There's our product catalog. There's information about finding the right product. There's information about getting into the right career. So a lot of really great things out there for you. You can download the Denis Wick app from Google Play or App Store. I'm going to share both of those links with you right now. So you guys should see that in the chat. And now let's move on to our panelists here. We've got Evan, Michael, and Matt, all Denis Wick artists. We have a fourth one I can count. We have a fourth panelist who will be joining a little later. He's on a recording session right now, so Josh will be joining us in a little bit. But Evan, why don't we start with you? Tell us about your name, your full name, although I think I've said it like 3 times now. What you're about, what you do in Nashville.
Sir Evan Clifton of Wilfershire.
Man, you're making me sound way too cool. No, so I'm Evan Clifton. I mostly play bass trombone, but tenor trombone, contrabass trombone, a little bit of tuba here and there. Around Nashville, I do a lot of teaching, and then studio work is here and there. I'm very new in town, so I just moved here about 1.5 years ago. So, and then the world exploded. So I didn't get a whole lot of a running start, but I mean it's been all right. And then in normal life, I travel a lot playing with orchestras. Back home to Michigan quite a bit. Occasionally up to Cleveland, Illinois, here and there. So that's me.
Michael Jones, let's go to you next.
Hey, Michael Jones. I would say primarily I'm a tuba player. I can play a little bit of everything. Trombone, euphonium, French horn, trumpet, throw a rock. But I've been up here in Nashville, by way of Lawrenceburg, Tennessee, I would say, going on 10 years. A lot of my studio sessions are done at home, through Sound Better, as I mentioned earlier. And I've been doing that here for about 2 years. I haven't really gotten the chance to get out in the studio scene in Nashville per se, but that's to be continued. I've been playing about 20 years now. Drumline live musician. Coachella, Beyonce OTR tour, all that good stuff.
The usual, playing with Beyonce,
I like how she was second on your list. Like, wow.
Oh my goodness.
Michael, do you do any teaching also, or are you just all performance?
Oh, no, I do lessons. I do a couple of Zoom lessons. I got 2 mentors I have right now. I got a tuba player and a euphonium player that I'm mentoring.
Great. Cool. And Matt Jefferson.
Hey guys, I'm Matt. I moved to Nashville in 2018. March 1st of 2018, after exactly 365 days in Chicago. And I've just really, really, really loved being here. I probably beat Evan by a little bit because they didn't really have a bass trombonist in town for a little bit, since this guy named Ernie Collins moved away to New York, actually, to play on Aladdin for the last 10 years, I think. And I kind of showed up, and within a couple of months, I just fell into a whole bunch of work. So I don't really know how the call list works in town, but I know I'm pretty high up there. So
He is.
So
Nice.
yeah, so I've got over 200 sessions since I moved here, and played on stuff like, let's see, I'll try to find some. Fargo, the TV show. The Mandalorian has a online video game that we're doing. We've done all the last 3 Star Wars video games.
Nice.
Let's see, Anthem was a big one. We did some stuff for ESPN. They just, I really had no idea that there was that kind of stuff going on in Nashville.
In Nashville.
Yeah. I really just assumed that all of that kind of big, high caliber stuff was going on in LA, just because that's how the reputation is. Well, the perception from the outside has been, but to come here and just find that there's some really amazing musicians here is really cool. Like it's a small enough town that everybody kind of knows everybody, but it's big enough that even though I just met Michael today, but it's big enough that like we've got a really big symphony that I've been lucky to play with maybe a half dozen times, and but all the symphony players are like really excellent like sight readers, so they do a lot of session work too. So there's just a really awesome intermingling of awesome musicians in town. So I'm very grateful to be part of that. Yeah.
Yeah, my first thought with Nashville is not a haven for brass players to find lots of gigs. Like I think of country music. The one time I was in Nashville, I was working with a music store, so I was visiting some customers. No, I was a dancer already. I was visiting customers, and my evening was spent listening to country.
To Broadway?
Like, country music. Maybe that was it. Country music and bars, and seeing the offering hat going around and learning a little bit about how musicians get paid there. And that was a little terrifying. And then searching for a pair of cowboy boots, which I couldn't find because I couldn't find a comfortable pair, but that's neither here nor there.
Okay, couldn't find a comfortable pair. I'm like, you didn't find any?
Right.
Okay.
No, right. This was not built for boots. But I guess from your perspective, Evan, and let's do the polar opposites here in terms of time spent in Nashville. So Evan and Michael. Evan, and you're just over a year of being there. Do you feel established? And how long do you think it takes to get established in Nashville? And I'm going to ask you the same question, Michael Jones.
Okay.
So right before COVID hit, second, third week of March, I was about to have the busiest spring of my life. The symphony that just called for the first time, I was supposed to play fourth trombone on Mahler 10. And then, the video game session work, like Matt was saying, was coming in pretty steadily. And then it all just stopped. But before that, I felt pretty good, for being there for 8 months, or here for 8 months. But the spring, I was starting to feel really good with how things were looking for the spring. And I also got really lucky, because I knew Matt for several years before I moved here. Jeremy Wilson was a good friend, teaches trombone at Vanderbilt. A few other people in town that I had met, in the 6 months or so leading up to moving, who, started calling people saying, hey, this guy's moving to town. They were gracious enough to recommend me for stuff. So I actually got hired for my first recording session on the second day that Nashville was my address, which was insane.
Nice.
that was the last thing I expected, because I had lived in Chicago, I had lived in several cities in Michigan. That didn't happen in any of those cities. Why should that happen in a big city like Nashville? So I mean, I feel like I got incredibly lucky with the people that I connected with before I moved here and since I've been here. And one of those is hopefully joining us in a little bit. Josh Scoff has become a really, really good friend, personally and professionally. Whenever I show up to a session and see him and Matt sitting there, it's going to be a good day. So yeah, I mean that's kind of my impression with my first year and a half in Nashville.
Nice.
Having been there 10 years, how long did it take you to feel kind of settled in or settle into what you were doing musically in Nashville?
Gotcha. So over those 10 years, I was back and forth from Nashville. I toured a lot of those years, but I would say I got settled in good about 2017, going into 2018. So right about that time, once I started getting my feet on the ground, and I started in public schools. I would go out to schools. I would talk to the kids, kind of pick a group, maybe a handful, kind of mentor, show them different things and, kind of, keep the energy there to, make them want to go on. And then around that time, I got the phone call to, go above and beyond. So now I got back from doing the touring gig. I got back settled in about 2019. That was slow. Coming back, that was slow. I didn't get a chance to plant my feet in Nashville like I wanted to in the studio scene. And as he mentioned, being in the atmosphere, I thought all of the work, that nature of work was in, LA and, New York or what have you. Nashville, I didn't get the studio, environment from Nashville. So I'm surprised to hear about it.
And Evan and Matt, you mentioned the orchestra scene out there. So for classical players, I know like in Chicago, if you're going to be in the orchestral scene, that means that, for the first 10 or 15 years of your life, generally you'll be playing in, around anywhere in Illinois and Indiana and Iowa and any like of the adjoining states, which that is a lot of driving.
Sorry.
Yeah.
So is that similar in Nashville, or you were saying that they've got a good symphony? Is there in the surrounding areas also? What's it like for a classical musician?
That's a good question. So why I've really liked Nashville is because I had a really, really uncomfortable time in Chicago. I liked it because of how much teaching I had, which was great. But just my skill set really didn't quite fit there. I don't think I was quite into the legit scene, classical scene enough. Like I was in it enough to be dangerous and really mess some people up, but like musically, I mean, like, but then like, cause my entire background has been like chamber music really with Maniacal 4. And then to come here and like the symphony is only 25% of their season is classical works. The other 75% is just like kind of shows and like backing people up and pops concerts and stuff. And because about 10 years ago, there was a really big flood and it was right downtown and it really messed up the Skirmahorn, the big concert hall. So they actually had to take a big part of their endowment, the symphony's endowment, to kind of repair it. So the Nashville Symphony really depends a lot more on ticket sales than other larger, something like Chicago would, which has such a big, powerful endowment process. So, so to kind of come here and just sort of like have this like sort of sweet spot of like, I was kind of like master of nothing and like jack of all trades kind of musically, like just kind of good enough at a lot of stuff that to come here and to have a skill set where like if you can show up and sound like you've been doing it for a while, that's great. So I got really lucky, and that sort of seems to like permeate out into the kind of like regional orchestras, which actually aren't super regional. They're pretty far away. Like Chattanooga is like 2 hours away, and it's a per service orchestra and stuff. And Huntsville is the same kind of thing, but a lot of the people who play out there also play in town here. So yeah, it's different. It's a lot different than Chicago, which had so many really great regional orchestras really close by. Here, I think, at least in my experience, and Michael and Evan, your experience may be different, but I've really found that the skill that I have, which is kind of being musically flexible on a mildly inflexible instrument, has been my biggest asset here for sure.
I would agree. And but that's something that I had to develop because my background is in orchestra playing. I mean, I was pretty busy in the Michigan regional orchestra scene, you know, for the time I was there. And it's similar to Illinois. There's a ton of orchestras. It also helps that you can drive across the state in like 2.5 hours. So like when I was living in Lansing, I could get to 15 orchestras in an hour and a half.
Is Michigan the hand?
Heck yeah.
Is it
yeah. And down here, things are just a lot more spread out. So like Matt was saying, even the bigger, you know, closest regional orchestras like Chattanooga and Huntsville are still an hour and a half, 2 hours away. But the positive that I've seen out of it, for me, is that I can actually stay in the city I live in and work in the city I live in a lot more, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
Such a good point.
Yeah, rather than leaving town on a Tuesday morning to drive 4 hours away to play with an orchestra, and then coming back on Sunday after a matinee, being in town, you know, sleeping in my own bed Sunday night, Monday night, and then leaving town on Tuesday again to go play with a different orchestra, which is what I did when I was in Michigan and Chicago for a lot of that time. You know, I'm here most of the time, especially now that I'm more settled here. It's nice.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like, especially during the pandemic, I've heard a lot of musicians, especially in the Midwest, questioning why and how they were doing that, traveling so much just to play and, you know, a series of regional orchestras. Especially now, because you can't play out live and you can't drive all those places. Now you have the time to reassess what you're doing. I mean, and people have been finding there's been more and more outlets to do your own recording and your own thing from your house, like Michael Jones. I don't know why I keep on saying people's last names.
Oh yeah.
like Michael, you were talking about, you know, and I can understand, you know, because a lot of your work is touring, so you don't have time to like fully get into a scene before you go again on another tour or something. So, you know, utilizing these, you know, where you don't have to be in any one state, you can just, you know, work from home and record your own studio. And
yeah, I think it's super hard when especially as musicians, especially as like brass playing musicians, or so much of your identity comes from like the work ethic that you create in school, right? And then like there's enough work around, especially when it comes to like regional orchestras or shows, that you can stay busy. But like when you take that away, it's like, gosh, what are you then? It's just the weird kind of uncomfortable thing, that realization, you know. But
yeah, it's a trend. I imagine it's a transition. What do you do now?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's been pretty cool though, because for like, again, for me, like, and Evan, I know you've done a few sessions since the pandemic hit, but everyone, like the community, it's weird. It's almost like there's like a little, like a club, like a little unit, and everyone's sort of like quarantine bubbled within themselves so they could kind of stay busy-ish. And, it was pretty cool to see that, like, I mean, from last year, I actually just like counted them all up, and I only played 10 less sessions than I did the year before. So I feel super lucky that everyone was like extra vigilant about like staying safe and being smart and like finding ways to kind of creatively work around it, so we could kind of protect the work that was showing up and keep it going to the point where we can stay reasonably busy. And you know, Nashville's such a weird place. I was talking with Barry Green, who's one of the trombone players in town, the other day. I actually filmed a project for him, and he was talking. He was kind of giving this like little interview, and he's like, you know what? He's been in Nashville for 40 years. He's a monster player, and he's like, what blows me away about this town is like you can just find, like, you just go down the street, you find this whole other community of people that you didn't know, you've never met before. They've been here just as long as you have. They're just as busy as you are, and you've literally never crossed paths before. And like, it's just like right now, like Michael, I remember seeing your name on the email, and I was like, Michael Jones. And I like looked at I was like, brass player. I was like, oh my God, it just like blew my mind. I was like, how have I never met this guy before? And you know, you're out on the road.
The feeling is so mutual.
It's crazy. It's really crazy. And I never had that experience where like the town was small enough where those bubbles can kind of bump into each other once in a while. Like Chicago is so big, and I never lived in New York or LA, but I know they're at least population wise even bigger. So, you know, it kind of makes sense that well, I don't know where I was going with that, but it's what I love so much about being here is it's really cool to get like perspective on the regular about how much cool stuff people are out there are doing. Yeah.
Well, on that note, do you guys feel like you kind of need to know somebody to get integrated? Like you both had people who were talking about you before you got there. So for somebody coming in fresh to the scene, I mean, I feel like for Los Angeles and New York and Chicago, quite a few of the artists just showed up, went to a club, played in a couple of sessions, you know, like a for an evening, not, you know, just a night where they just, you know, you could just show up and play. Anyway, and you know, they got to know people that way, and then within a week they had gigs. But you know, pretty much all of you, well, Evan and Matt, you both had people talking ahead of time. So is it going to be much harder if you don't know anybody coming into town?
I would say yes. Having just recently done it, I actually moved here because of the people I knew. I didn't move here because of the city of Nashville. I moved here because, you know, folks like Matt and Jeremy and Nick Laufer, they were telling me like, hey, there's room for another bass trombone player in town. Like, and it blew my mind because I had no idea any of the like scoring work existed here, any of the kind of session work that existed. I had no idea. I was like, okay, we're going to go downtown and listen to some chicken picking on Friday night. I thought that's all Nashville music scene was, until these guys were telling me, hey, this is serious stuff. So I moved here because of the people. So for me, it was one idea, one process.
And I second that. Not to cut you off. I had some friends. Well, I moved here for some friends as well. Originally, I'm from South Florida, and I kind of always wanted to plant my musical seed somewhere different other than Florida. So I winded up in Nashville, and it you know, it was a slow start. Like I mentioned earlier, you know, I was in and out. But in the public schools, and you know, there's there's enough people discussing me for me to, stay busy in that scene. But definitely gonna poke you guys' head on the, on the studio ventures.
Poke. I do not know that expression. I instantly poke your head. Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah.
They don't say that in Canada.
Oh, blame my daughter.
I love
Something Cocomelon, ain't there's no telling.
I love it.
Oh God.
Well, this is why we do webinars like this, to get to know each other, and attendees too. Any questions out there, make sure to speak up and put them in the chat section. But this is how you start to form those relationships and get to know people. So if you're planning on moving to Nashville, you know somebody.
Just to give a little shout out to the chats there, Lyndon at Bandwagon. I'm fully converted to sending all of my repair stuff there, because hands down, like easiest, like most relaxed vibe ever. I loved it, and the quality work was really great. So there's a little shout out to Lyndon. But good to see you, man. Good to see your name printed next to purple letters. But yeah, what were you talking about? Oh,
and Lyndon wants to point out that he stocks all Denis Wick items. This is a Denis
Hey-o.
Wick. So anybody who needs some Denis Wick products, go contact Lyndon.
That's why we're friends, Mary.
Yeah, I
I was like, oh, you had me.
Lyndon.
But yeah, you asked about the knowing people before you move, and disc golf, exactly. Lyndon is super good at disc golf, and I thought I was good and pretty good until I played with him, and I'm like, oh my God, this is super humbling. But you asked about knowing people before you move, and I mean, I really think that's such an important element. Like, I don't know if anybody is, I know Lyndon is a business owner, but if anybody listening is a student, most of your career will start with the community. Like Michael mentioned, musical seeds being planted. It's like that all starts from your community. Like, if you want to like make the metaphor of it, like the people is like the soil, water, sunshine, all that stuff. And
absolutely.
And what's amazing about like social media is you can actually, like, there's something freaking awesome about playing trombone and you recognize somebody's name from Instagram. It's like, like that counts as community, right? So just like when I moved, the only people I knew in town were Nick and Karen. And like, I don't see Nick on sessions like ever. That's just not the work circles that he's ended up with. He's got this great road gig, and that's where he is. And, I thought my career would kind of hopefully end up in town was I knew there were some of these scoring sessions on in town because Nick had done a couple of them. I was like, man, that'd be cool. But, if not, I'll just try to teach some lessons, blah, blah, blah. But from the start of that community, like, it took this weird left turn, and Barry actually found out about me because of a video I posted on Instagram, and he called Nick and was like, hey, is your bass drum friend in town? Can you come to this thing tomorrow? I was like, hell yeah, I can come. I was like, I'll do anything to come. And I showed up, and it was just like, it was great. And before you know it, it's like, it turns out Barry lived like around the corner from, where my girlfriend at the time lived, and like all the stuff. And before you know it, the community's taken this weird pivot. So it's like, it starts all in one place. Who knows where it's going to end up? But like, I really think, I admire the people who move to a city cold, like not knowing anybody. Like, God, that's so brave. And I just don't think I'm that brave, or you're reckless or whatever. I don't know. And just to kind of hedge my bets, I just wanted to have an idea of what I'd be heading into. Cause, moving to a new city when you're in your 30s is kind of scary. Cause, grown-ups have houses and stuff at that age. And I'm like, holy crap. Like so I was just like, I just wanted to kind of hit the ground running, and it all sort of starts with the people. So if any of us are Instagram friends, please say hi.
To pull an idea from what you just said, Matt, for the students who are listening, I met Matt when I was in school.
Right.
Yeah, when you came through Western Michigan University with Maniacal 4.
That's right.
And actually, the video from that masterclass just popped up on my Facebook memories like a couple days ago. I played the Verhelst Capriccio
Imagine that.
in a masterclass for you.
I feel so old.
I mean,
can I call you my former student?
I mean,
no.
But like it all comes back to your circle, especially when you're in school.
Yeah.
Like when your professor takes the guest artist out to lunch, ask if you can go.
Yeah.
Like, because that's where I made, strong connections with the Maniacal 4 guys, and Jeremy Wilson came through Western when I was there a couple times. I got to know him pretty well when he was there. And then when I moved down here, it was just smooth sailing.
And Nashville is one of those, I honestly believe there's enough musical work here that anybody can find a spot. It might not be the spot you thought. It might not be sort of your dream job, but from my point of view, I never, Mary, earmuffs, don't listen. I never loved trombone enough where I can just like get lost in practicing like for hours and hours a day. It was my biggest issue with the orchestral world. I literally wasn't nitpicky enough. I didn't have that attention to detail that I think is required to hit that level of excellence. And that kind of wandering eye sort of led me to other things like videography. And what's been really cool about a town like Nashville is it's got that kind of like area where people are super willing to like explore other things. And and you'll have willing like participants, and they'll help you in every way they can. Cause there's a bunch of music copy work, which I legitimately did not know was a career. And two of the people I know who do a lot of copy work, obviously aren't doing much of that right now because their biggest clients were on Broadway, and they just bought some. So their kid's a hockey player, and they just bought this hockey laundering machine, and that's going to be their new side hustles. They're going to drive around to like high schools and tournaments and just like charge like $50 a bag. And I was like, God, when I played hockey, I would have killed to have something like that, like yikes. And it's just like, it's got this really entrepreneurial spirit in this city. And I just really, Lyndon's a great example. Like, if I'm not mistaken, I think it was a music ed degree, and I think he was a band director before going back to repair school and then opening a brand new business. And it's like, there's all kinds of people like that who've just reinvented themselves in like really amazing, inspiring way. And I really love it here. So taught for 10 years. There you go. So
taught for 10 years.
Crap, that's like a freaking decade. So that's like a full career. Like there's just so many examples of people like that who've just like, they're like, nope, I'm just going to do something else. And then they do something else really well. And it's just, it's really cool. So if you are looking at a town like Nashville, I just think you'll be blown away at how kind and accommodating people are. And like, they weirdly go out of their way to help you in a way that I never had that in other cities like Toronto, in Chicago. It's not that people weren't nice. It's that they were either so busy or it was just hard to kind of like make space to try somebody new out or whatever. It's hard to break into those circles, So, I've loved it here. I really have.
From all the different talks in the different cities, it seems like there's a city for everyone. Because I'm with you, Matt. I was going the orchestral route, and I just didn't have the focus, the passion to sit down and be as nitpicky as I needed to be. And I found chamber music. I wound up touring with a a brass quintet for a while, but for just enough time to, make me feel like I've checked off some things off my bucket list. And then I had a child, so it's been my focus for a while.
Nice.
But I feel like the more musicians I get to know, it's like the right city will find you almost, because if you get frustrated enough in one city, inevitably you'll move. Like both Matt and Evan have had a difficult time in Chicago. Chicago's not been my favorite place to freelance, but then when we were on the Chicago meetup, all the guys who were playing in Chicago are like, yeah, I got here and a week later I had gigs and it's been great ever since. And it's almost like the city that you're supposed to be a part of just ends up clicking because, it's got the right set of ingredients for your career. So like Nashville, it sounds like, that entrepreneurial spirit where you're a jack of all trades, where you're interested in a lot of different things, seems to be a good fit. Whereas, I feel like Chicago and New York more, if you have the time, attendees, check out our YouTube channel, Denis Wick YouTube channel, or join Team Denis Wick. We'll be posting all the videos, but it's been really interesting to see the different tones from each city and the different personalities of each gigging scene from city to city. And Nashville, I think so far has been the most interesting to me because I knew so little about it, but it's, and now something that was mentioned earlier, Lyndon was just saying Nashville has the biggest underground music scene that I've ever seen.
Yep.
Classical jazz.
For sure.
I agree.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many times, so I live in an area called East Nashville. And what I liked about it was we're really close to this big, Shelby Bottoms Park. It's just a park. It's like a little nature area. And so it doesn't quite feel like the city. And this has happened now 4 or 5 times where I got asked to play on a session and it wasn't one of the big ones on Music Row. It was like some home studio. And I punch in the address and it's like I could have walked. I'm like, what the I was like, I've driven down this street and I'm like, you pull in this sketchy looking house and you're like, where are we? And then I'm like, I got here first and I was like, I don't know. And then all of a sudden all these familiar faces come out. And I'm like, okay, there, I recognize a car, but I'm like, man, it's so crazy. So yeah, underground music, it's not a word I would have thought of. That's totally what it feels like. Like just all these people have found these ways to create, survive totally and thrive. And I've never been in a place that has so many musician homeowners, for sure. I'm like, wow, who can afford a house playing trombone? Well, it turns out lots of people can, and
they exist.
I've been bad with money, I guess.
Now, out of all the artists that I've talked to since the beginning of COVID, I feel like Matt, you were one of the first to get back into work. And it sounds like from what you're saying here that I almost get the idea that Nashville never really shut down. Like there was a little hiatus where. So
it definitely shut down for sure. And especially when everyone was kind of trying to sort out what to do and what you kind of needed to do to get through it and stuff. Cause there's a story of a bunch of the vocalists in town who had some session for, I think, Disney, and they were so excited to see each other and they were all giving each other hugs. And then 17 of them got COVID and you're like, whoa. And it's
that
pretty,
is a vocalist.
yeah, it's it's shocker. But none of the guys that I know have gotten I think I had it right when the pandemic started. I had a lot of symptoms and stuff, but that's kind of when everything did shut down. And after about, I did my quarantine and felt better, and I got a test after the fact and I was negative. So I'm like, okay, so I'm good now. And, but everybody's just been really, really careful. And, I think
I second that.
Yeah. I think we're aware that we've got some work, in a time that most people have no work. And I think everyone's really mindful of not messing that up. So, and it helps that there's a ton of, it's not like London with Abbey Road, but there's a lot of big studios in town where there is a lot of space and you can kind of keep, your 6 feet apart and on breaks they stopped like having things like coffee and whatnot. So they really did go out of their way to and like now at Ocean Way, there's the big one where they do all the main stuff. They're checking thermometer or your temperature and stuff, and you have to make sure you're wearing masks at all times, that you're not playing. And it's been I think we're all pretty grateful to have something to do, and nobody wants to screw it up because it's scary right now.
Do you feel like there still is some stuff that's shut down in terms of, I mean, I guess live concerts and stuff are shut down, but
so live music, and that was never really what I was gunning for in town. I was hoping, honestly, like my dream life would be something where I would get an email or a phone call and just they're like, hey, can you show up and play your instrument? Which is what it ended up. Speaking of, I was almost a guy, but I ignored him. Don't worry. I'll call you back. What was I talking about?
What
I had a thought. Things being shut down, live music. Oh yeah. So I always wanted to kind of be in a position where, you just kind of go to the call, and oh God. Okay, if anybody else can jump in on that, I just need to respond to this guy. I'm so sorry.
Oh, it's all right.
But real quick, actually, so like a lot of the biggest difference between what I do and what Matt does is that in normal life I do a lot of orchestra stuff. Even after I moved here, the Kalamazoo Symphony would still call back in Michigan, Grand Rapids Symphony. I do some stuff in Cleveland here and there. I still have my bass trombone position with the West Michigan Symphony, because they pay good travel and it's a chance to get back to Michigan, see some people. And so when I got my contract from West Michigan Symphony for this season, it literally said, "You're being offered no work."
Yeah.
But they had to send me a contract, and I had to sign it to keep my position. So that's been tough.
Mm-hmm.
Not because that was probably half of the playing work I was doing, at least. Was either orchestra stuff or I was doing a fair amount of like university guest artist kind of touring, recitals, master classes, that kind of thing. And it shifting online also had a huge impact on my teaching load. Pre-COVID, I had about 30 students a week, and it's very up and down as COVID goes. So, it's. I think that's where me being newer in town has had a bigger effect, because I didn't have the time to really establish myself before the world blew up. And so, I'm doing what I can. It's all good. I'm alive. I'm living indoors, eating food. No complaints. But it's had a huge impact on my playing work, just because of the stuff that I was doing.
Yeah. Josh, we just saw you log in, so if you can hear me, I put you on mute momentarily. We were getting some car noises, I think, but feel free to unmute yourself at any time.
Hey, Josh.
Hey y'all, I'm here. I'm driving home from my recording session.
All right on.
Hey, what's up, Josh?
Howdy. I'll hang and listen on my way home, and if y'all have anything specific you want that I can jump in on, I'll do that. But otherwise, I'll mute and just take part as much as I can in the car.
Sure. All right.
Double duty. Pretty cool.
Well, how do you guys see things opening up as COVID slowly starts to open things back up? I mean, are things gonna be able to open back up for orchestras, for any studios that got shut down?
For orchestra stuff, basically the target is September.
Target.
Trying to start next season. Until then, different orchestras are handling it differently. I know Jacksonville's been working quite a bit, still doing live reduced house concerts. A lot of orchestras are just doing, the video type stuff. Just anything to stay relevant as an organization. But some orchestras are completely furloughed. Obviously the Met is the big one. It's been furloughed since March. The London Symphony, a lot of these big groups just said, right in front of my face, Nashville Symphony was the first orchestra to cancel their season. And
coming back.
But yeah, for orchestra stuff, September's the general consensus of being the target.
I'd be curious, Michael, like what's the touring? Do you have a sense of what that's going to look like once you're like, I don't know, is there a touring season? I mean, that'd be summer, right?
Well, the information that I've been gathering, we're getting rather, it'll definitely be in the fall. I coincide with Evan. It'll definitely be like towards September, October-ish for any of, we get any word by that. But my side my side gig in the public schools, fingers crossed. I believe they went back to school here recently. They started back going back. I personally probably won't be going to any schools till probably the fall, just to be on the safe side for myself. So it's slow but surely getting back together.
Yeah. I guess it's just, man, so interesting. It's like, it's so interesting to like realize it's like just sort of like where, just hearing you guys talk, it's like where my sort of like scene has sort of ended up being. And it's like I think the studio stuff, it will slow down. It has slowed down. And there's definitely some folks who, might have been older. And I know like there's a couple of guys in town who took an early pension from the union and are looking to, who might just kind of just sort of like shift gears into maybe writing more or what have you. And when it comes back, and I do think it will come back because like streaming services are out of control right now. Like, have you guys used Peacock at all?
What's that?
Have you guys use Peacock, the NBC app?
No,
I haven't.
They have so many good shows, and it's such a disappointing app. I'm like, who knew that? Like, I was so into the computer interface. I just had no idea. But like, I do see that like TV and like Quinn, like another Denis Wick artist is doing all that stuff for Drunk History and Michelle Obama's TV show. It's like, I do see that like that industry, it kind of feels like it's picking up steam some, and Josh can jump in on that if he has any more thoughts about that. But like, I do think studio work will transition into something different, because Christian print music has been the kind of thing that's been holding up the recording industry in Nashville for a really long time for brass players. But as churches went online, you don't need church orchestra music very much. So it became a big transition into something else. So it'll be interesting to see what happens. Personally, I definitely lost a few students. I teach at a few schools in town, but I'm also an adjunct faculty member at Lipscomb University here in town. And they've given me access to their facilities, and I actually started a high school trombone choir. And because we can get in their rehearsal hall on the weekends, can sort of spread out there. So from a personal standpoint, the pandemic's given me some space to kind of do something different that I never would have had time to do. And it's been like super rewarding in this kind of really unexpected way. So my hope is that when it comes back, and it will eventually, right? Like it just has to. Like there's too many important things that we can't do right now. And when it comes back, we'll be like, oh my God. It's like you forget you were starting for it, you know?
It's refreshing.
Yeah. And once it comes back, and I'm convinced it will, it's going to look different for sure. It might take a long time until, you know, shows and orchestras can be full capacity and people aren't weird about going. But like I played a Christmas concert with Chattanooga Symphony, and they did it in this like big outdoor like atrium, and it was all brass music, and like this kind of, everybody could be 6 feet apart, and all the orchestra members were 6 feet apart. And I was just like really impressed at like how like industrious certain groups have been. So to kind of keep things going.
Yeah, it was a similar experience when I played in Huntsville.
Yeah.
In November. They like, from a programming standpoint, it was fanfare for the common man, a Haydn, so all brass, and then a Haydn piano concerto, which was strings, a few woodwinds, and piano solo, and then the 13-piece Appalachian Spring. So like, it's still a substantial program, and it's still worth it for the musicians. It's worth it for the audience. It's worth it for the organization. And they just did it at like, I think it was 25 or 30% capacity house. You know, all the precautions in place, plexiglass, the works, super spaced out stage. Like it's possible. But I do agree that I think it's going to have lasting impact in some form.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it'll be good when it's all over, though. I'm tired of it.
Mm-hmm. I mean, okay. On a positive note, though, I had this realization last weekend, actually, when I was playing a wedding, and every single time my horn goes in the case now, I feel so incredibly lucky to be doing what I'm doing. Because it used to be, you know, my horn didn't leave the case when I was at home, because it was just going to go right out the door the next day. That's not happening right now.
Yeah.
So even, you know, playing 3 sets of cover tunes with a wedding band was super enjoyable. And like the church job I did for Christmas was super enjoyable, because especially right now, like you don't know when the next time you get to play with people is.
Yeah.
So Josh knows this group, but they were Evan was telling me that the trumpet player played September on piccolo.
Yes. It's amazing. And by that I mean it's not good.
He had a C trumpet too.
Nothing says superstition like C trumpet.
Extra superstitious.
Just to chime in on what you were saying, Evan, I will agree. Like, as bad as things have been, and how much work like has gone away, and how it's been difficult to get things going, it has really renewed my sense of gratitude for what I'm able to do every time I get to do it. It's, you know, there's a point in time beforehand where, you know, yeah, you go play a wedding, or you go play a session, you're like, hey, great, I'm making some money. This music is terrible. And you just can't wait to get out, you know, just being honest. And now it's like, man, the recording session I just did was with a group of very nice amateur folks at a church, and they didn't have a trombone player. So they wanted me to come in, hired me to record and do a video thing for them. And it was so much fun. It was a blast getting to just make music with people. Who cares what level player they are? Who cares what the music is? They were having a great time. and it made me have a great time and just reminded me, like, man, I get to do this for a living. Not so much lately, but when I do, it's like, man, this is really, really cool that I've managed to find myself in a place where I'm fortunate enough that this is my job.
Josh, these road noises are just making my day, man. Sound like you ran over a body there, and you're just like, but I'm like, what is happening?
I'm just glad I can share how great Nashville roads are with everyone. I'm almost home.
But I think Josh makes a super good point, and Evan too, or everybody's kind of said it, but like they're. I mean, this probably happens everywhere, but I don't think I've ever been in a town with like where I was like this close with like kind of top call folks. And there's definitely like, you can see the divide as like musicians get older, right? And like you can see what happens to the people who've been like sort of all about like the way it used to be, and like kind of like, you know, kind of crusty and like, this isn't how we do it in Nashville. And like the people a little bit more like open-minded and sort of open to change. And you can kind of see the people who are still doing stuff versus the people who I haven't seen really in a while. Not to single people out, but I will not say any names because this is being recorded. But I ran into somebody who was just like, can you believe it? This is the first session I've done since March. Like, yeah. I'm like, you're kind of a buzzkill, and you're not super fun to talk to, and you know, you're an awesome player, but you know, if people get a chance to actually do something like work related, it's like you want to enjoy it because it's going to be awesome, and you don't want to mess with it. So I kind of think that whoever's left once everything's done it's going to bode super well for the next batch of stuff, because we're going to have a different type of attitude and mentality that kind of might force a reset, and I'm looking forward to that.
And to piggyback on that, I will say, as the new guy in town, the general vibe in Nashville is super great. Like everyone's really warm and welcoming and super
friendly.
open and super friendly. Like I showed up to my first recording session like a month after I moved here, and everyone was like, people who I knew by name or didn't know at all were coming up to me and introducing themselves. Like I was petrified. It was the first recording work I'd ever done. It was actually the first time I ever played on click. Was the first session I did here.
I talked to you after that. I remember you talking about like not having been used to the click, and I remember that I talked to you that weekend.
I was absolutely petrified.
You should have said something. Can the engineer? Can you turn down that metronome? It's kind of loud.
But so like because of the circumstances, I like introducing myself to people wasn't at the top of my list. I was just trying not to suck. But so just the fact that other people came up to me, and actually I was sitting next to Josh on that session.
Evan, when I found out you were moving to town, so there's this, I'll name drop this one because he'll agree with me. Prentice Hobbs, Josh, you can vouch for this, is one of like the scariest, like crustiest, like redneck stereotypes you've ever met. And he plays this like beautiful classical trombone, and he's like this like kind of big and grumpy looking, and he's, you know, balding, and he's got this Tennessee accent Alabama accent. And he was getting up in Alan Umstead's face, who's this contractor in town. He's like, no, there's this guy, he's a bass trombone player. And he said, you really got to call him. And I was like, why is Prentice yelling at Alan? And just make sure you call him. Just make sure you call him, because he'll do a really good job. And I was like, who's the guy? Because I got nervous. And Yes, Evan Clifton. Well, get out. I just had no idea that you were coming. So it was pretty cool because Prentice he's one of those guys who's always complaining, and he's usually like joking about it, but it was cool to kind of see that like one of the first call guys in town was getting up and standing up for a guy who hasn't even moved here yet. So it's kind of the indicator of what some of the people are like. Prentice is the bomb.
Prentice is great.
Yeah. Like
side splitting laughter between cues.
Oh, you need to, Mary, I'll send you a picture. It's like, I know I didn't describe him in the most colorful way, but it's like everything. You'll like see a picture, be like, oh yeah, I get it. That was accurate.
But it's definitely unique that you have people like to vouch for you, because I feel like that's something that's not been something of the other scenes where like it doesn't, like New York, Chicago, like people knew people coming to town, but it didn't really matter. Like you kind of have to pave your own way. Whereas it sounds like in Nashville, if you have someone to vouch for you, they will they'll put it up for you. You know.
Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. It seems so community oriented here, and it's wonderful.
Yeah. If you are, into
I've got one too.
Yeah, Matt's got one too. His is better than mine.
I just hang all these mutes from my wall, so
yeah, it's pretty cool. That one's biggest practice meet ever. You can like sit in it.
Yeah, well, I've got a pretty loud house, so
I probably got my daughter's crayons somewhere over here in my life.
Well, so we're getting close to the end here. If attendees have any questions, shoot them through. But this is a non-Nashville related question for all of you to answer. I think one of the scariest things that we have going into a new city or a new playing experience as brass players is our own imaginations. They're pervasive myths that there's Josh.
There's Josh.
Dude, your car is so nice.
I had to show off. That's what I do,
But there's pervasive myths in the brass world that hold us back, that we're afraid that something has to be a certain way, and then like Matt was saying, like he didn't necessarily fit into the orchestral crowd because he didn't have that passion for the nitpicky details. But contrary to popular belief, Nashville is a jack of all trades place. But is there a specific pervasive myth in the brass world that you feel like that you maybe bought into, or that you see other people bought into, that is just wrong now that you're on a professional level, or that you're working and you can see things a little bit more realistically? What do you think any students or younger players listening, they need to get out of their mind and not be afraid about?
I have an immediate thought, and Mary, you kind of touched on it with imagination. I'm sure you guys can all relate to this to varying degrees, but like I never really thought of myself as a creative person. And I was like, then I finally get here and I don't know, I get some sort of professional validation and I'm busy and it's been wonderful. And then I realized it's like, what if my imagination was where I was wasting all of my creativity? So like, it was just being funneled into like these ridiculously absurd, like, oh, is this like, do I sound bad? Is this person like upset? Is that why they're like not talking to me? Like all this kind of like jacked up bullshit that I like kind of told myself, and was really probably based on nothing. Cause looking back at being in Chicago, it's such a big town and such a big city. And it's like, man, there were like so many people there. It's like, it's probably in their best interest to just like not worry about meeting this guy who they're probably only going to see once. It's like, well, if I see them a bunch of times, then you'll just start to get to know each other just through proximity. But like, I really think that experience, this is going to be such a cliche fortune cookie answer, but like, just do it. And like, even when your brain is telling you to like stop or do something different or change. It's like, just tell it to like shut up for a sec and just do it like a few more times, like a few more months, and then see if your opinion has, if the needle's budged. If it has, then you're probably creating a bunch of the problems or imagining a bunch of the problems like they're just not really there. So if the needle has not moved, it's like, okay, then you've got your finger on something. But I really think most people are generally kind, and if you're perceiving any sort of nastiness or whatever, it's probably you misreading signals, would be my guess 99% of the time, because who wants to waste any time like picking on somebody that like, it's not practical, you know? And I don't know. I just think just do it and then do it again and then do it a few more times. And then you'll kind of actually know, because your knowledge will be based on experience way more than perceptions.
Ever read that?
Yeah.
Fortune cookie?
It's a really big fortune cookie. It's like the size of that crack cake.
It's like a CVS receipt fortune cookie.
Yeah. Just,
Oh my God.
Wow, that is a universal truth there. Like, we're all in a different spot. Well, I guess you guys are all in Nashville.
Yeah. You know, to kind of follow that, especially you know, directed at a student perspective. Until quite honestly, probably about a year ago, I had the mindset that like what I did was who I am. Like my value as a human being was attached to this hunk of metal that I make fart noises with my lips into. And it was tough when
I that in 2. I was like, what about in 4? I get it. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Farting noises in 2 and 3.
No, man.
Okay.
Only 2.
Yeah.
Only 2. But like when that external perception of value vanished, I struggled for several months. I almost moved back to my parents' basement in Michigan. I was like that close.
A lot of people did.
Yeah. But by that point, I had, you know, met the great people here in town and like started to feel a sense of community, and I didn't want to leave that. So that's why I'm still here. It would have been a lot easier to just move back to my parents' house and then just write it out and then come back when it's done.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to leave that, and because of that perception of this connection between what I do and my value as a human being. But that created the space for me to broaden that definition of value. So like a great example, and I'm really glad Josh made it now. So one of the things that's been really sustaining for me personally, while the world's weird and dumb and stupid, is me and Josh have been getting together in his backyard and, you know, having these little whiskey hangs, which has been great.
Nice.
I went once and I found that I can't taste the difference between most bourbons.
But I mean, it's stuff like that. Like I wasn't a whiskey drinker until me and Josh started hanging out after a session we did in like May. And
nice. That's what's up.
That's it has nothing to do with the whiskey. It's about the hang.
Right.
It's about the people.
Right.
And that's where the value is with people, not with work.
Yeah.
People are something that comes with work.
Right.
But it's the things that I remember most about you know, crazy playing situations I found myself in. Like the first time I played with the Cleveland Orchestra. It wasn't that, I mean, of course the orchestra was great and it was amazing, but the most memorable moment from that experience was sitting in Shakar Israel's house after the first concert, sharing a glass of whiskey. And it was that personal experience that is most memorable about that, and so many other situations that I've somehow found myself in. It's the people. It's the people where your value comes from, to some degree. It's the people that matter the most, not the actual work. So, like, get your face out of the practice room, like, be a human being.
Relationships you build.
That was a long tangent. I apologize.
No, yeah, that was pretty good.
There's a backside to the Persian cookie.
There's a backside. There's a backside.
It's the relationships you build, and it's just a bonus that you get to make something cool or something beautiful with those people that you then have a good relationship with. Like, it's always awesome when I have the unusual opportunity to walk in and see you guys sitting there, and I know I'm about to be part of a section playing a video game or a movie score, and I'm going to learn something, and then afterwards maybe we'll go grab something to drink, and I get a great hang. When obviously again when the world's not currently on fire.
Yeah.
Mike, I don't know you, but I'm going to take a wild guess, and just from the little bit I've heard from you, I would also like to go hang with you. So
nice. The feeling's mutual.
Sometime after this.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're spot on. It's all about the relationships, and that's one of the things I love about Nashville. Most of the people here are very, very cool and very warm and welcoming and genuine. It's the music industry, so there's always some weirdness here and there. But most of the time, at least amongst the players, it's a really cool vibe.
Yeah, it skews awesome. For sure.
I don't think this had anything to do with the question you asked. I can't even remember what it was now.
Conquering pervasive myths in the brass world, but I think it all goes along with it. Michael, were you going to say something too?
Yes, I was coming behind Evan with the people, and making those connections. So my method is, I'd say, similar to a lot of people. A musician came to my school and inspired me a very long time ago. It wasn't so much of what they played, it was how they played it. It was that wow factor. So I try to reciprocate that when I go to, whomever middle school, whomever high school, whomever elementary. And, I'll talk to the students, I may play, and those little sessions or, conversations that I have with them, it stays with them. It for some, it may have given them, that little boost to, I think I'm gonna go home and practice my trombone and my tuba today. I like that guy. He sounded good, or what have you. So in transition to that, I feel like we lost some of that with this pandemic, and I'm desperately eager to get back out and inspire the next generation of musicians, because they need us. They definitely need us.
Yeah, man, I miss my kids.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think what you guys are pinpointing on here is unique. Like, it's something that hasn't been brought up in the other discussions yet. Like, I think that is a big issue I think a lot of musicians have, is they forget about when you're on the gig or when you're on the audition, or you're in the throes of trying to make your name out there. You are worried about the notes that are coming out of your bell, as opposed to the relationships that you're making. Like, and even the relationships you're making, they have a different spin on it. You're not actually trying to get to know people. You're trying to network, and I think just the appreciation of being able to play your instrument still in a session, and the appreciation to sit next to a colleague. And are you guys with me still? My internet connection.
Yeah, you froze for a second.
It popped out for a sec.
All right.
We're still got you.
Yeah, you're good.
But I think that appreciation that I think that's a myth. Like we focus so much on networking. I think that's a major myth that you guys are all hitting on, that it's, yes, you have to network. Yes, you have to play well on the gig, but you have to, as my trumpet teacher would say, you've got to, with all your might, grasp onto that initial reason you played music, the initial reason you played, that initial passion, that early passion, because that's what allows you to be a good human being on the gig and allows you to do everything, because you at your root are just doing what you love. And when you're doing what you love, you kind of are excited and you want to be around the people who are doing what you love too. You're not looking at them as a future job or a future connection or something.
Right.
And I think when you do play like that, then like a better sense of who you are as a human being comes out in a person, and like personality traits come out, and that's the best kind of networking, I think. So I do think it's kind of win-win, there's no downside to approaching it that way.
I actually think that networking is kind of an evil word. For me, there's a performative connotation with that. There's a performative assumption that goes with the word networking. Like, I just want to hang out and be real. Like, it's really exhausting to put on a face.
Yeah.
I don't want to do that.
Yeah. I think we can all
Yes.
The hang.
Networking is 1,000% the hang.
Yeah, I like the hang better.
Mm-hmm.
We had a question come through, which just a few minutes ago, about brass bands in Nashville. Are there any other styles that aren't strictly classical or jazz? Do you think there's potential of that kind of thing in town when things get closer to normal? So, are you any brass bands?
Go, Josh.
Yeah.
There definitely is a brass band here in town. It's called Half Brass, and they do events, weddings, parades. They've done an excellent job of making themselves known around town. Like, if you want that New Orleans style brass band, they're the guys you call. And it's definitely a deeper group. There's, probably 3 or 4 tuba players, 5 or 6 trombone players they can call, a whole bunch of different woodwind players, and a couple of drummers. So there's definitely that here. As far as styles other than classical and jazz, I feel like I'm kind of terrible at both of those and just barely hang on.
Me too.
I sit next to Evan and Matt, and we're doing those video game sessions, and I'm like, I'm trying to play loud as I can, but you guys have this background where you know how to have this huge orchestral sound. So I'm just hanging on for dear life. Find myself in a big band, and they're like, yeah, take a ride, blow over these changes. I'm like, okay, I can do it. But it's a little bit terrifying because I'm just not nearly as good as, like, there's other guys that are phenomenal jazz players. There's some guys in this town that are unbelievable classical trombone players that can just sit there and play excerpts, and there's just gorgeousness falling out of their horn. And I can fake my way through a good bit of that. But there's definitely a really cool commercial scene that has pop music, R&B, funk, hip hop, country, and that's where I like to live, honestly, is in those other realms, and use the things I learned from the classical side and from the jazz things that I've learned, and apply that stylistically to whatever I get to do, and sound concept-wise to what I get to do.
I hate to bail here, but I've been ignoring a phone call for the last 15 minutes, so I really but you guys are wonderful. This was so fun. Yeah.
Nice to meet you.
Likewise.
I'll definitely connect with you after this is over.
Please do. Thanks for putting this together, Mary.
Yeah, thanks. And we'll be ending up here in a few seconds too, but Matt, you got to go. Okay. So thanks for hanging out with us.
And if anybody has any questions for me specifically, shoot me an email.
Team Denis Wick, join the Facebook group.
I just joined it. Yes.
Oh, good. See, Matt's a member.
Yeah. Good. All right. See you guys.
All right. Take care.
Yeah, so it sounds like Nashville Scene is great. I'm sold. Sell the house. We'll move out there soon. If anybody else has any questions, shoot it up in the question and answer right now.
Mason,
Otherwise,
I just saw who asked the question.
Ray Mason.
Do you guys know Ray?
I haven't met him yet.
Ray.
You guys would love Ray. He's a
Some
great
New
dude.
York friends have made me aware of his presence.
He is amazingly good at what he does, and that's trombone, trumpet. He's Lord, he probably sings and dances
So what
for
you're
all
saying
I
is we all need to hang out in your backyard soon.
know. Yes, that would be a wonderful thing.
Nice.
If we have another day like today, yes.
You know,
Right, with the weather.
65 and sunny all day.
Wait, you don't have 5 inches of snow outside right now, and it's not shooting ice out from the sky? I'm in Chicago, Josh. It's been a day.
If that happened, it's like it would actually be the apocalypse.
Well, yeah, between the weather and the music scene, it's making Nashville sound pretty good. Other than that, thanks so much for joining us. Josh, next time hang out a little longer. We'll plan a night that you're not busy.
Nice.
The one night out of the last 300 that I didn't have anything happening.
Hey, thanks,
so much more
Linda.
important. Like, I'm busy with a recording session, you know.
Now I look cool.
Right, great. All right. Well, hopefully we'll see you all at another webinar. Sign up with Team Denis Wick, and we'll stay safe, stay healthy. We'll see you again. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Hey, y'all.
Good evening, gentlemen.